Welcome to the Mystical Attraction Podcast. I'm Lisa Canto, your host and transformational coach. My mission is to bring you real-life stories to empower you to be the creator of your own destiny and to discover the mystic within. Hello, and welcome back to the Mystical Attraction Podcast. Today I have on the show with me Erica Blackburn, and she is my Reiki guru, and she's a very good friend of mine, and I am very excited to have her on the show with us today. Hi, Erica.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to get into it. You are so very talented at what you do, but why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I would love to. So I'm Erica. I am trained in many different facets of energetic medicine and energetic healing. And for me, it all really started when I was a child and I really felt a connection with spirit. I really felt a connection with nature, but I didn't really know what to do with that. And I remember making vision boards before I knew what a vision board was, cutting out pictures and pasting them together and putting them on my wall. And so I feel like in retrospect, this draw to energy medicine has always been with me. But I took a business route in school. I'm also really drawn to business and learning about business and being in business. And so I have a business background, an undergrad and a master's. But when I was studying in my undergrad, I had this knowing that I was going to study yoga afterward. And so I studied yoga, and then it leads from one thing to another when you kind of start down this path. And then yoga led to Reiki, and then Reiki led to body talk, and body talk led to Chinese medicine. And now I've been working with clients for 10 years doing this work, and have also remained a student of it myself because I feel like they kind of go one and the same. Yeah, I kind of look back and I'm like, wow, I wasn't expecting this to be the path that I was going to take. But that's literally exactly what happens when you start down a spiritual path, is that you don't really know the outcome. You don't always know the end result. And I do remember there was a very specific mantra that I would use. And I think I didn't know the power of it when I was using it. But it was something along the lines of, I'm asking to be a channel for divine creativity. I'm asking spirit and source to work through me. And I would recite it at my desk when I was working in human resources. And I didn't really know what that would lead to, but it has kind of led me to this exact place. Doing this with clients now all over the world, online and then also in person.
That's amazing. So you've been doing this for quite a long time.
Yes, I have. And I feel like for those of us who are drawn to this, we've probably been doing it since the moment we came out of our mother's womb. We just didn't realize it because for some, we're not born into families that have a context for teaching us about what is coming through our experience. And I would say my family was kind of neutral in that aspect. There was some religious upbringing, but then there was parts of my family, people in my family that had really bad experiences with religion. And so I think I was given just lots of messages about just kind of find your own path, find your own way. Here are some options, but whatever you feel drawn to, go ahead. So I think that really helped me be able to explore it, and maybe explore it in a way that allowed me to feel more comfortable with it early on, even though no one was showing me exactly what to do. So I think that's maybe why the awakening happened earlier for me, and why I have been doing it for such a long time. And in the beginning, my family was kind of what are you into? What are you doing? And my mom would, encourage me to get back into the roles that I was in when I was in the corporate world. And it kind of was just me needing to embrace, this is part of who I am. This is part of my path. So, yeah.
That's amazing that you were able to embrace it and bring it along with you, because a lot of people kind of push it away, I think. But when we were talking before recording, you were telling me about one of your very first experiences. So I'd love to hear about that.
Yes. So one of my very first experiences when I was young, in elementary school, I would literally go to bed at night and I would close my eyes and all I could see were two things when I would close my eyes, which is a tree, which I think now I am understanding it was like the tree of life. Like it was more of a mystic representation of a tree than just like any tree. And I would see like images of Jesus. And I was going to Sunday school. So there was like a sense of that wasn't a foreign idea. Like it was safe to like, know that there was some type of spiritual connection. But I don't really remember like really learning about Jesus the way that I was experiencing him and like the safety and the bright, beautiful white light. And since some of my family members didn't really feel supported by religion, there was kind of that like inclination to maybe keep it to myself. Like I didn't really even know like how to talk about it or share that with people. And then as I got a little older, I started to have premonitions about things. And the very first one that I had was like a little bit scary because it was about my sister getting in a car accident. So that was like one of the first premonitions, and I knew it was going to happen. And then it happened the next day. And then I got really scared about what all of this meant and what this meant to get messages. And I just kind of shut it down. So it's like I had this beautiful, like really, I guess, blessed or positive experience when I was really young. But then as I was a teenager, I had this kind of scary experience. And I don't know if I knew how to reconcile like what to do with all of that. Because then I was getting more in the spiritual realm and I wasn't really involved in religion or like the church so much. And so I didn't really have support or a context to know what to do with that until I met one of my first like spiritual Reiki masters. And she helped me to understand that I was never going to experience something that I didn't know what to do with, or that I couldn't call upon like an archangel or Jesus to help me with. So that has kind of been my mixed experience from early kind of childhood and adolescence.
Wow. Okay. I can imagine that must have been really scary as a younger person to have that premonition and then have it come true.
It is. And what I've learned since then, because honestly, I didn't even realize that one of my own personal skills or gifts was premonitions. And as it has happened now over the years in different ways, what I've come to realize is it's actually to help prepare me for something. So like that was to help prepare me for what was going to happen. I even had one right before the whole pandemic thing happened, a few months prior to it like actually happening and breaking out. And I would get this premonition of like not being in person with the yoga students that I was teaching. And I was like, I have no idea what this is about. Like, I don't understand why this is coming over me. I don't understand why I'm feeling drawn to like connect with people online. Like I thought, oh, I guess this is just the way of the world. Like maybe that's why I'm feeling this way. But then I came to realize like it was to prepare me that life was going to look different. It was going to feel different. I wasn't going to be in this familiar space that I was in. And so in looking back, I'm like, oh, it's just to help prepare me. It's just to help give me like a runway to say, this isn't going to surprise you. You're going to be prepared for it. And maybe you can also start to help other people be prepared for things. So,
wow.
Yes.
You have like a little superpower there, really.
Well, I think so. And I didn't realize it, even until like more recently when I started recognizing, and I think this is the thing that probably happens to a lot of people. Everyone has special gifts. Everyone has certain abilities and gifts, but we maybe just sweep them under the rug, or we think that, oh, everyone can do that. Everybody has that, which it's not necessarily true. Like we all have our own special, unique gifts. And it's sometimes helpful to have some support to say, yeah, this is a gift of yours, and lean into it. So yeah, I don't know that I even knew how to talk about it. And now that I can, I'm like, oh, I need to lean into mine even more. And then, other people who are listening to this podcast, I hope this helps them see that, you also, each of us has some gift that we can lean into.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you talk about premonition, do you get a feeling? Do you get a vision? What's that like?
Yeah, that's a great question because that also happens different for different people. For me, I'm really clairsentient. So, which I have heard is one of the more rare forms. And so I think if someone's listening to this and they feel that way as well, that they sense things, it's like you're a real feeler if you're clairsentient. It's like you feel something in almost like your heart center or heart area or like kind of heart chakra, chest area. And so I think because that is the way that I get my messages, it's so easy to second guess them or override them. Mm. For someone who's like a clairvoyant and gets like a very clear image or clear audio and, hears something, sometimes that's easier to like not second guess. So for someone who's a feeler, which I feel like there are many of us out there in the world who are feelers, it's almost like we need to be safe in the quiet space inside of ourselves to lean into that feeling. And so that's how I get my messages. It's like starts as a feeling and then it will either develop into an image or it will develop into like hearing something or the sounds of something to almost give it additional support.
Wow. Okay. So if someone wanted to explore and try to maybe see what they are capable of, how would someone start and do that?
Yes. So I feel like there's many different ways, and I'll just share the ways that I, have used or cultivated. I feel like one of the overarching ways that you can cultivate your gifts is meditation. And like, Lisa, you know me, I love a good silent meditation. I love it, just like no seated silent meditation, because it really helps us to connect with literally the divine, with source that is in us. But sometimes the distraction of our mind kind of clouds that. So that's one way. Another way is to ask for your skills to be developed. And when who are we asking? Well, we're asking source, we're asking spirit, we're asking our higher self. And it's literally, it can be a conversation out loud. I like to talk out loud when I pray or when I talk with spirit or source, because I think it adds an extra level of like power behind it, because not only am I feeling it, but I'm hearing it back. But if someone's more comfortable journaling, they could journal it, or they could just have that conversation inside of themselves. But asking, giving permission for your skills to be developed by your like spiritual supports is another way, because unless there's a dire reason for something to come through, there is generally a respect from the spiritual realm that, they're not going to force things upon us if we don't feel ready, if we're not ready, or if there's not a reason for it to be developed. Like there is that level of boundary, like healthy boundary. And so asking is another way. A third way that I have noticed in the more like recent times, especially with clients, is first getting clear on whether you happen to be a head, heart, or gut person. So if you're a head person and like you are really analytical and you are really bright and you are really intelligent and you really like to use your mind, I think that's an important thing to lean into. And it may mean that you're more of like a claircognizant person, like you have a knowing of things. And I think the mind and the head and the brain and the ego get a little bit of a bad rap in the world of spirituality in the more modern times, as if like we need to get rid of the ego, get rid of the mind. I don't really feel that way. I feel like we can integrate it. We can support it. We can create a wholeness in it. And then if you happen to be more of a heart-led person, like that would look like meditations or using crystals for the heart, like rose quartz or like a clear quartz, to just allow your heart to feel supported and open. I really love rose oil for that as well. Or just doing your own healing around your heart center, because sometimes if we're a heart-led person and there's any hurt or betrayal that we've experienced, the heart might feel safer being a little bit closed off or having protection. And so you first might have to work with opening up that space so that there's a safety for all of the feelings to come through, for all of the heart messages to be present for you. And then the third one, which is the gut, I like to relate this to the animal of the horse, because horses you love horses, Lisa, so you know all about this, like very spiritual animals, they have really big bellies, like really big guts. And it just helps us to remember that there's a gut brain. There's a brain in our gut. And so for those of us who are gut people, it's like that gut instinct, that gut knowing. And to lean into that, it's almost like supporting the health of the gut, supporting the awareness around what's happening in like your solar plexus, your sacral chakra area, whatever allows you to wake up that gut area. So for me, it's tapping, but it could be like dancing. There could be a realm of things. Certain yoga poses and breath techniques really allow the gut to open and expand in terms of the messages that can come through. So those are some of the main ways that I would suggest.
Yeah, those are amazing. Do you think that the gut might be the most common thing? Like when someone says intuition, I automatically think like that gut feeling.
That's a great question, in that I think sometimes what happens is, and I think this has been my experience, that we think that spirituality or spiritual gifts or developments are like only this way or only that way. And I think the gut instinct is more common in maybe the world, like more common to talk about in mainstream culture. But what I noticed, and this is just my experience, I was a very heart-led person, but that didn't really get cultivated in me. So I thought that, okay, I guess I need to rely on my head. I guess I need to rely on my intellect, or I guess I need to rely on my gut. And it almost disallowed me from exploring my strongest sense until I met some teachers and some supporters who helped me lean in that direction. So I think that the gut instinct is more of, it feels more comfortable in the modern world. It feels a little more comfortable to talk about in mainstream, but I don't know that means that it is the most dominant. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. I think maybe you're right that the other two ways aren't as much talked about.
Well, because when we talk about the other ways, like seeing visions or hearing things, sometimes that gets associated, and it has for centuries, with ways that we classify. I hope this doesn't feel too strong to say, but like mental illness. Mm-hmm. And so there's obviously a breadth, there's a range, there's a spectrum. But I think sometimes what happens, like for me as a little girl, since I was a kid, I've experienced anxiety. Like the kind of anxiety that I'm like, where does this even come from? Like, I spent half of my life trying to figure out why I had anxiety, where it came from, like, what can I do about it? And so that would have been classified as like, experiencing a mental illness. And I didn't really know what to do about it. So it led me on my seeking path. But what came out of it was realizing that I was this clairsentient feeler who was meant to be at this point in time on a healing path for both myself and then supporting others. And so I think what happens is we maybe discount like visions of things or hearing things as like, oh, I hope that doesn't sound weird. I hope that's not like off base. So we don't want to talk about them with other people. And that is why, in this day and age, connecting with someone who's a healer or someone who, does have a spiritual background, no matter what it is, and you feel connected to them, you feel safe, it's a trusting relationship, it's a really lovely place to get to explore what all of those other experiences might be, because they could be different for each of us. And, you might have your own that want to be cultivated, but you need like a safe, comfortable space to cultivate that in.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of it can be really scary. And yeah, it definitely has a bad rap, right? With, like you said, the mental illness part. One of the messages I know you want to promote here is like that an everyday person can experience this kind of life.
Yes. And to add to that, I would say that You are like an everyday we are all experiencing it.
Yes.
Right? Like we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And so we are all experiencing it. It's more of a matter of, are we open to that? Are we allowing it in our experience? And are we able to connect with, a safe mentor or teacher, or a safe community to be in where we can explore that? Like, I think, and are we wanting to do that? Are we ready to do that? Because again, going back to the permission, I feel like there is this level of permission. Is that part of your path in this lifetime? Like, I don't know that it's part of everyone's path in this lifetime to explore all of these spiritual realms. But I do think it's a possibility. It's an option. And I think if there's a calling toward that, if there's something in like your heart or your being that you're like, ooh, I feel drawn to that, then it's like, okay, lean into that. Because I've worked with many clients, and there are some clients, albeit it's been a smaller percentage, but there are some clients who the messages that come through, it's just like, you don't have to lift the veil. You don't have to explore beyond the veil. That's actually up to you if you want to do that. And then there's more of a majority of people that I've worked with that it's like, okay, it's time to go deep here. Like, let's lean in, let's explore spirituality, let's explore consciousness, and let's do that in a way that, meets you where you're at.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, the podcast, right, they're going to be listening to this because they want to know more, and maybe they do think that this kind of work is possible for them. So I think that definitely these conversations are going to be toward people who are already maybe a little open or largely open. Definitely the big takeaway there is to really every single person is able to experience this, and you're not going to be given something that you're not ready for.
And to add to that, it's like, not only do we all have the ability to experience it, but source, like bliss, anandamaya kosha, as we call it in yoga, is literally in all of us already. Like, it's already there. And so it's more of like an uncovering whatever might be kind of covering that up, or it's a more like integrating into that space within us. And I do think we all can do it. If we want to, we can all do it. And then it just becomes a matter of deciding.
Yeah. And everyone always says, right, like it's already inside of us. Bliss is inside of us. Happiness is inside of us. And I didn't understand that for the longest time. Actually, like, you really helped me a lot because we worked together for about 2 to 3 months. And that was a really big part of our work together, is understanding that like your external circumstances don't really matter. Like, we cultivate it inside of us already. And for people that don't quite understand that concept yet, how can they start and learn that?
Okay, so I am going to do my best to like break it down in a visual, even though we're not in a visual context right now. But I like to think of it like a triangle. So, and this triangle is called downward causation. And it's like bliss is at the top of the triangle. Our innate wisdom is the next level. Our mind is the next level. And then our energetic body and our physical body. So when we say that we are bliss, we are this like innate joy, this innate source is already inside of us. It is us. It's like that exists first, and then we get conceived into a human body, and then that human body grows, and around 4.5 months, when we're growing in the mother's womb, the mind comes online. So now we're this like bliss being, but we have a mind, and then we're going to be born, and then we're going to have this physical body, and we're going to be here in this physical environment. But what's important to remember is that we were first bliss. We were first innate wisdom, which is like the conceived form without the mind. Then we developed a mind. Then we developed, the body is developing at the same time. And then we're humans in these bodies. And so what's helpful then in the work that we did together was first connecting with the energetic. It's like we walk back up the triangle. You had already had experiences in the physical realm with like yoga and moving your body and doing some breath work. And we just moved back up the triangle with Reiki to the energetic body, and then with conscious living investigations to the mental body, and just literally started to work back up the triangle. And I feel like then meditation becomes a beautiful bridge to our innate wisdom and to connect back to bliss. So I think that even though it sounds elusive, because it's like, how do I get back to that place that's inside of me? There are practical steps. Like, that's kind of how I work with people. It's like there's practical steps to break that down depending on what you've already experienced and where you're at. And then it's the remembering that the mind is creating the physical experience. So and I know that you like do so much with people with the mind and with belief systems, like we can start to change what we're experiencing based on what's happening in the mind. And sometimes the change that happens is just releasing the judgment around what we are experiencing. Because this is all a projection from the mind. And it's only judgment that kind of says, oh, this is good, or this is bad, or this is right, or this is wrong. And so as we create like stability and safety in a healing relationship, you can start to move back up that triangle and work with the mind and beyond the mind, which is really where bliss is, beyond the mind, back at the top of the triangle.
That was a great explanation. Thank you for that. I don't know do you have maybe a photo we can attach in the show notes and show people?
Yes, sure. I can absolutely provide that for you. Yeah. Yes.
And then I know that you have a bunch of stories that simple synchronicities that have happened to you throughout your week. And just to illustrate that little things are happening for us all the time. And we need to be open to receive them and notice them and be grateful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also ask for synchronicities to happen. So for example, like I will often ask to see numbers. Like I will often say to spirit, like, okay, like spirit, just show me that you're with me. Like I love to see certain sequences of angel numbers. So I just say like, show me that you're with me. And then those numbers start popping up at, all over in the day. Also like feathers. There was a time in my life when I was really kind of transitioning from what I was doing to what I wanted to do. And I would be walking a lot. I love walking. And every time I saw a feather, it was just a reminder, like, you're on the right track. And it would always be right after I had a thought about something that was kind of leading me more in this direction. And I was questioning it. And it was like, then I would see a feather and it was like, no, you're on the right track. Keep going. And so signs from nature are also really supportive. I know you're really connected with like the animal realm and animal spirit. So I always look for that. If there's a certain like animal in nature, especially one that might be like less common to see where I live, I'm always looking that up and just checking in with that animal spirit. But yes, synchronicities happen all day, every day. And we do need to like be noticing them. So one specific one that happened recently, I was thinking about a book that I could not remember the name of it, could only remember the picture, like kind of vaguely what the picture looked like. And I was like, how am I going to find that book? Like, I don't even know what it's called. Thought that, just like, let that thought be released. I kid you not, just a couple days later, one of my clients messages me and says, have you read this book? And shows me a picture, like sends me a picture of the title and the cover of the book. And I was like, you will never guess. I was just like wondering about that the other day. And so that is like such a small moment that I could have passed by. I could have said, oh, that's just a coincidence, or not even remembered that I had that thought. But or maybe I wouldn't acknowledge it with her, right? But I think that it's important when we ask for something, or when we have a thought and then we see it play out in our life as a synchronicity, that we acknowledge it somehow, that we're like, oh, I thought about that, now it's happening. It also happened recently I was needing to like connect with my mom, and I was getting ready. There was lots of things going on in the day. And I just had this feeling come over me, like, call your mom right now. And I was in the middle of literally going out the door. So I was like, oh, this is such an inconvenient time to do that. But I was like, no, I got the message. I'm feeling the message. Put all my stuff down. My partner's like waiting for me to get going, put everything down, call her, and she's like, oh my God, I literally just picked up I was just going to dial your number. So like they happen all the time. And it's all these little ones that if you start to acknowledge them, then either the skills that you have are going to develop and evolve, or it also means that really big things don't have to kind of like hit us in the face, right? Because we will start to get messages, and if we're not paying attention to them, and this, I'm not saying this to like frighten anyone, but just to say like, the universe is not going to give up on you. Like if you're meant to go in a certain direction or get a certain message, like that energy is going to prevail. And it's, if we start to tune into the smaller messages, if we start to tune into the smaller pieces of information, which means that we have to be quite present in our day, then it is going to be that we may not need the big things to happen in such like, you know, sometimes a traumatic way to get the message. And believe me, for a long time in my life, I was not getting the message because I was really like trying to go down a different path. And I was like, no, this is the path. I'm going in this direction. And I kept getting big messages and I didn't listen to them. And so I just say from experience, it's okay if we're getting those big messages, but if we can tune into the small ones, it might not have to get as big.
I love that message, because you often hear a lot of stories of like, well, you know, I was in this car accident, which led me to my spiritual awakening, or, you know, this big thing happened that was very traumatic, and this led me to this path now. And so you're saying by listening to the small signs, we can potentially avoid these potentially big disasters.
Potentially. And I think, I mean, I also want people to know that if you have experienced something really big, or if something really big is going to happen in your life, there's always a divine timing. Like there's no mistakes. Like you're not going to get it wrong. You can't get it wrong, right? But if you are noticing the small things happening, or if you can, you know, you're hearing this message and you're like, that might be happening to me. Well, then, you know, you're hearing it at the right time, because the universe is trying to say, we can work with you in the small ways. We don't need it to be a big way. Right. But for those of us that need it to be a big way, well, that's how it's going to happen. And either is okay. I do think as the whole world is starting to awaken at a brand new level right now, though, like as we are coming into all of these new paradigms and these new shifts, and as the new ones are being born into the world, and they're already like so high vibration, so tuned in, I think maybe all of us, there might be an opening for everyone to say, okay, how can I work with the small things? And that's another thing that, you know, some of the work that I do with clients is working with really, really small things in your everyday environment, so that the big things don't have to build up. Because sometimes that's going to be a necessity for some individuals, and sometimes it's just not. And like, rather than let things build up, let's just work with the small stuff right away.
Yeah. Like, what's an example of that? Can someone like alter their environment to help them?
So rather than altering their environment, how I would work with that with someone is altering the perception of the environment. So for example, it could be working with a song. It could be working with, I was on a walk yesterday and something happened during my walk, like a little weather storm was happening. And I used that awareness to look deeper within myself. So we can use weather, nature, we can use things in our everyday environment, like things in your kitchen, things in your bathroom, things in your bedroom. Like we can literally use the smallest things to have a big awareness. And that is sometimes helpful because there isn't as much emotion or dramatic feelings attached to like a really small thing. Yeah. Like, for example, there's construction in the building that I live in. So I've been working with that experience of being around construction. Well, what does that mean for me? How am I judging my own inner construction or the lack of construction that's happening inside of me? Like, what does that look like, both as a metaphor in my life and maybe quite literally?
Okay. I love that. That's a lot that I do with my clients, but you're just using the environment to do it. So like when I do it, it's more of like, well, I'm comparing or I'm jealous or, I think this person triggered me. So I use people and you're using the environment. That's great.
Like more like intangible objects or like a song or a TV show, like things that are just a bit smaller, because not everyone is ready to work with a bigger trigger. Some people are, and some people aren't, right? And it's literally just giving options depending on where everyone's at in their own journey, their own evolution.
Wow. Okay. You provided us with some great information today and amazing stories. Where can people find you and maybe book a session if they're interested?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Lisa. My website is ericablackburn.com. And on Instagram and on Facebook, I'm erica.blackburn.energy. Yes, and on my website, you can book like a 1-month intensive. So that's usually how I get started with people who are like just wanting to explore things, is doing like a 1-month kind of really working deeply into whatever's happening in their life right now. And then for people that are ready to go really deep and really commit to the process, that is a 6-month mentorship that I do with clients.
Yes, and I am a client of Erica's, so I definitely recommend her services. So check her out, everyone. And do you have any last minute advice or tips, thoughts, quotes?
Yeah. Well, I think just to go back to this idea that we are all spiritual beings having a human experience, which means that we are in constant communication, connection, and co-creation with source, with the divine. We all have it. And it's like, are you wanting to lean into it? And if that answer is feeling like a yes, and it's sounding like a yes inside of you, and you're a big yes, then just know that you can develop your skills and gifts. It's 100% possible for you. And like there is space in this whole world for all of us to awaken and evolve and continue to discover like all the magic that's inside of us. And ultimately it just comes down to like all of this universal love that's inside of us that's trying to be expressed. And like the world needs it now. We all need it. And so if someone listening is like feeling a draw to that, feeling a pull to that, then I would just encourage them to like really lean in. And the support is definitely going to be there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on.
You're so welcome. I'm so grateful for this, Lisa. Thank you.
Hey ladies, if you're ready to transform your life and make an impact in the world, I'm inviting you to join my one-to-one coaching program, where you're going to confidently attract and manifest wealth, freedom, and fulfillment. Learn the tools to become the boss of your mind and clear out the limiting beliefs that keep you from your dreams. If you're ready to up-level your life, go to lisacanto.com and book a free discovery call. Your future self has already paid in full and is waiting for you on the other side.